Welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Josh Taylor, in tonight for Bob Pompiani, joined in studio by Gene Collier. I want to remind everybody the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call brought to you by Ireland Contracting, Pittsburgh's #1 home exterior expert in roofing, siding, windows, and gutters. Gene, we talked about the Steelers in the first segment. Let's get to the Pirates here briefly. Couple different reports just swirling around here. There's some interest apparently in Kevin Gossman of the Orioles. Another report saying that there's still interest in Chris Archer when we thought it had waned. Apparently it is back and the discussion's still going on. And now we're hearing reports that they're interested in a couple of relievers from the Padres. Kirby Yates and Craig Stammen are names that we've also heard. If I had to ask you a couple of things that you think need to be added to this team right now, what are you looking for?
Starting pitcher. That's still the most important thing. There are two that are interesting. Archer's one of them, obviously. The other one is Zach Wheeler, who's beaten the Pirates twice, and we just saw what he can do over the weekend. Beyond that, there's really not an interesting name out there, at least to me. I mean, if you can add one of those two guys, I don't see much point in the bullpen guys. I mean, those are hit and miss. Maybe they'll help you, maybe they'll hurt you. Who knows?
Let's go to Twitter here. PA Ram says Pirates need to acquire Archer and add a bullpen pitcher to continue making a run at the wild card. Also, he says Corey Dickerson needs to be healthy. He gets the offense clicking. I would definitely agree on the part with Dickerson. I think one of the things that actually worked the most for this offense during that stretch is you had Dickerson, Marte, and Polanco all hot at the same time, and you had all three of those guys in the top three spots in the order, getting most of the at-bats and probably pacing the offense. But it seems like PA Ram agrees with you, Gene, as far as maybe looking into Chris Archer. Let's take some phone calls on the subject, 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. We will start with Rob in the Hill District. Shout out to the Hill. Rob, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
The Pirates crack me up with this. Every year they in on all these top pitchers, Chris Archer and all these dudes, and they never give up never give up the prospects to get these dudes. But every time the Pirates got a good player that they gonna trade, they never get a great return from their players. What's up with that?
If I knew, I'd have that job, but thank you for the call. I can't really explain it any other way. If I knew, I'd be in that seat and not in this one. But to his point, and there is a level of frustration, and if there's one you want to circle, that's probably it. The return that they get in trades that they send out and the players that they eventually go after. Because one of the major problems I've had, one of the major criticisms I've had of Neil Huntington in recent years is that he's traded guys, Gene, when their trade value is actually low, not when it's at its highest. So when you trade a guy with low value, you're going to get low return. So if that's the case, either you do it at a time when their value's higher, or maybe you hold on to them until their trade value swings back around. But I'd make the case with Andrew McCutchen and with Neil Walker. They were both traded when their trade value is probably a lot lower than it should be to get a better return for those guys.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I think as far as the caller goes and the supposition here is, I mean, it's a little bit of a generalization. The Pirates have added a pitcher at the deadline, like, for example,
not a big name guy, but they've added guys whom people didn't want when it happened, by the way.
Yeah, turned out to be great. And, they have gotten people back. Look what they got for in the Garrett Cole trade, for example. I mean, that looks like a good return. We still don't know. It included a really good prospect from the Astros. So, I mean, those were kind of blanket statements that, and while maybe generally true, I mean, they're a bit of an oversimplification.
And it stands to reason that, not to mention that when you're talking about the names that are being discussed here, the teams that are being discussed, these aren't even the biggest names on the trade market. Chris Archer and Kevin Gossman are not the biggest names being mentioned here. You forget, you saw Jay Happ get traded to the Yankees. We saw Lance Lynn go tonight. I would make the argument that there have been names that have been discussed that were bigger names that the Pirates were never on to begin with. So this is actually one of those years, Gene, it's more of an anomaly because they're not being discussed with the bigger name pitchers. They pretty much came in on the second floor, if you want to use that analogy. But it does stand to reason that the Pirates were never really expected, and this is something that's probably maybe past history has created this particular opinion, but I don't think the Pirates are expected now to be involved in those talks with big name guys, because I think other teams have been able to do this with other interests in mind, with having those bigger named prospects being dealt. Because I think other teams, Gene, have dealt from a position of strength where they've dealt guys that they don't have use for anymore. Like they can part with a certain outfielder because they have three guys starting that are better. Mm-hmm. The Pirates, in contrast, are finally in a position where I think they have minor league guys that aren't better options than the ones that are there now, unless you want to argue middle infield, in which case I'd have that discussion. But as far as outfielders go, is there a guy in the system right now that you're putting above Corey Dickerson, Starling Marte, or Gregory Polanco?
Meadows.
I don't think there is.
No, Meadows.
In Austin Meadows, some people would argue that maybe you can insert him. If you moved one of the three, you could insert Meadows, but you're not any worse off.
Right.
So arguably you're in the position where if you're the Pirates, you have a couple minor league outfielders that are probably blocked by a couple of guys that should be more available to be used in deals. But we still have a little bit less to the day to figure out if that's going to happen. So
Probably won't.
in our estimations, it probably won't. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's go to Ethan in Cranberry. Ethan, you're in the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So, like, as of 8:30, I read an article that the Pirates are, like, all in on Chris Archer and, like, not so much on Kevin Gausman. So who would the Pirates have to, like, give up to get Archer? And would this be, like, a good trade for them?
I haven't heard all in. I have heard interested, but thank you for the call. Another report that's gone out is that I think there are 4 or 5 teams that the Rays are dealing with, and all of those teams have been asked to submit final offers for Chris Archer. I don't know what the Rays are looking for Archer. And this is the thing that's going to have to be, for me, this is the deciding factor. Chris Archer's under contract for a couple more seasons. He's a guy that has started at least 30 games in each of the last 4 years. He's also a former All-Star. He's got a resume that's going to carry some value attached to it, even if it seems inflated because he hasn't been as good in the past couple years as maybe he's been at his peak with Tampa. He's still going to have inflated value because he has a very team-friendly contract that's not expensive for multiple years, and he has a resume that stacks up.
It's very attractive to the Pirates. That's right.
It's very attractive to any team. So to try to gauge what a team's going to want from, my estimation is going to be whatever you would think is a fair deal, Tampa's probably going to come a little bit higher just because they're in a position to negotiate.
Trade Josh Bell for him?
Josh Bell for Chris Archer. Well, I guess in the current situation, probably not because Bell's injured and Tampa probably won't want an injured player. But all things being equal, it wouldn't be a bad idea. It wouldn't be. It's something I would think about. Now the question would be afterwards, who becomes your starting first baseman? Does it become a platoon situation or whatever have you? But that's a deal I would listen to. Would Neil Huntington listen to it? Probably not. That would be my guess. We will take one more call before we take a break. Let's go to Bob in Indiana. Bob, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Josh, thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling in.
I wanted to touch on something I heard. I didn't hear the whole story, and I shouldn't really call and talk about something I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, here we are.
Don't let that stop you.
We're here.
But I believe it was a fellow from the Atlanta Braves apologized for some stuff when he was like 16 or 17, and another guy.
Sean Newcomb, yes.
And, you know, this is just so ridiculous, this stuff that that people come up with. I mean, you know, we all, I think, done something dumb or stupid when we were younger, you know, 14, 15, 16. I mean, you're adolescent. You don't know any better until you grow up. You know, and for them to make such a big thing of this, I think it's so stupid, and I just don't understand what – I think the guy should have said, you know, hey, I was younger. I didn't know any better. It's over. Be done. Don't come up with these big statements, apologetic letters, because – it was something that wasn't meant to hurt anybody. It was done because you didn't know any better. A lot of people do stuff they don't know any better when they're young. You know, like you say, they're taught, they grow up, they learn. Their life changes around. I mean, besides you, Gene, and myself, I think a lot of people have done dumb things, you know, and that's just how it is. And the other thing about the
there's more?
Kind of talking about, you talked about the Pirates going for the top pitchers. They're never going to go for the top pitchers. They're going to go for the second level because the Pirates, as I said before many times, are cheap, and they will not spend the money. So anyway, I just want to hear what you think about that. Thank you.
I don't know about you, Eugene, but that was a lot to ingest. I'm a little full. Let's start small here. First things first. Let's be really clear, because we all say, oh, yeah, we've done stupid stuff when we were younger. Yes, but the difference is when we were younger, Gene, there wasn't social media. So what would be the equivalent of that? Pretty much doing something publicly that people in many places could see, right? So we're talking about social media. So it would have to be something done in a public forum that people can pretty much see. You ever do anything in a public forum that was that embarrassing?
Oh, I'm sure I have.
That young of an age? Especially considering the language that Josh Hader and Sean Newcomb used at that point?
No, not in that regard.
Okay.
The thing here is that the internet never forgets. That's why people are suing Google now for the right to be forgotten. I mean, your point is valid that, you know, young people do stupid things, but when they do stupid things, they should apologize for them.
At the time. Don't wait till after someone digs it up when you're rich and famous and then someone asks you about it. It goes to another point too. And this is something that I have to point out, because people say, oh, it wasn't intended to hurt anybody. How do you know that? You weren't in the room when the tweet was sent out.
It wasn't.
And you didn't know the individual that sent it.
It wasn't intended to be nice.
And clearly, you obviously aren't one of the people that's affected or marginalized by the language itself. So how could you possibly know what it's intended to do? That's the only question I have with that. Everything else, if you want to look past what a guy's done, fine. But at the same time, you can't sit there and write it off, especially if you're not one of the people it affects. That's something, to me, it just seems like you're just trying to find a way to move past it, and you don't want to deal with the heart of the issue, which is, how do people who might have been affected by what was said, how do they feel about it? And until you acknowledge that and you're willing to talk about it, it's going to be something that continues to be brushed aside. With that said, Gene and I will take a break. We'll see you in a minute.